In 1994, the Gundam franchise took probably its biggest risk ever with the release of Mobile Fighter G Gundam, a vastly different series to everything that had come before. And in 2024, that series turned 30 years old. I watched it for the very first time, so let's talk about it. Before I do get into my thoughts, I want to hear from you guys, so head on down to the comment section below. If you've seen G Gundam, then let me know your thoughts on it. Is it one of your favourite series in the Gundam franchise? Is it one of your least favourites? Let me know all that down in the comment section below. And while you're there, please do leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are a fan of Mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Regardless of my opinion on this series, which, spoiler alert I guess, is generally very positive, there's a huge amount of respect and appreciation I have for G Gundam because it essentially revived the Gundam franchise. Post Victory Gundam, which wasn't received particularly well, they kind of had to go in a new direction, or they kind of had to bring something out that would really get people going again and kind of add new life into this franchise. So G Gundam in and of itself was a massive risk because it was coming off of something that wasn't particularly beloved and was also a massive shift in terms of tone, genre from everything that had come before, because everything that had come before it was all universal century, it was all part of this one continuous timeline. So without going to this alternate universe which is so completely different, essentially a shonen series with mecha elements in it, a mecha series if you will, with a shonen skin, and that was just a vastly different direction to go in. It was a huge risk that I think ultimately paid off. If it wasn't for G Gundam, we wouldn't have Gundam Wing, or after all Gundam X, or even things like Gundam Seed, Iron-Blooded Orphans, most recently Witch from Mercury. All of those things I just mentioned there wouldn't exist if G Gundam wasn't received well and if it wasn't a successful series. On the topic of this series being a mecha anime with a shonen skin over it, that works really well for some reason. Like, they managed to find a way to seamlessly integrate shonen ideas and generally a shonen concept in with mecha. It feels like a Gundam series, but it feels like something so different, but it does maintain the core of that. A lot of the themes, a lot of the character dynamics, action, all that kind of stuff is very Gundam, but also it does feel like Dragon Ball, it does feel like Yu Yu Hakusho. All these, great 90s shonen series, that's kind of what this feels like with giant robots in it, and that's a really cool concept, and I think for the time especially it was the right way to go. During the 90s, the mecha genre had passed its peak. I wouldn't say it was dying necessarily, but it wasn't quite at the height of power, if you will, that it was, and you had like a new king come in shonen. So you essentially take a lot of elements of that and combine that with a genre that, like I said, wasn't dying, but it had passed its peak, and you kind of add new life into it. You take what is essentially working at that time, combine it with something that worked before, and thus G Gundam came about, and like I said, it was successful as far as I'm aware. All these years later, for a hell of a lot of people, it is their favourite Gundam series, and I don't think there's really anything that came after it that's as different and distinctive within the Gundam franchise as this series. Much like a lot of shonen from that time period, G Gundam does have its fair share of cheesiness and over-the-top moments, but it combines it with a lot of sincerity, especially when it comes to character moments and story moments. You can buy into the emotions that characters are going through, diving into their backstories, really getting deep into their psyche and their relationship, and a lot of the love points that they have in this series as well. It all comes across as very sincere, but you can do that whilst having really over-the-top action and these giant power-up moments and such, the kind of stuff you expect from Dragon Ball, and this series knows when to implement those really cheesy, over-the-top power-building moments, and also the quiet moments with characters as well, and it does it in a way that feels so seamless and doesn't feel out of place. We can't talk about G Gundam though without mentioning the mobile suit designs. I don't think there's really a Gundam series out there that has such a distinctive array of designs and colour schemes and just overall elements implemented into those mobile suits. Now don't get me wrong, there's probably series out there where overall I prefer the designs of the mobile suits, but there really is not a series like G Gundam out there where you can have a mermaid looking Gundam and you can have something that's so heavily inspired by American boxers, but then it also has dual wield pistols. Like, there's really not a series out there that just goes for it in terms of mobile suit designs. There's definitely a fair share of weird, crazy designs, over designed things out there in Gundam, but there's nothing that really feels so creatively injected in the way that G Gundam does when it comes to its mobile suit designs. And it really is a crime that we do not have more G Gundam kits in terms of Gunpla. There's so many designs in this series that really deserve a Gunpla and I think would sell very well, but they just haven't made them yet. They've only just made like some of your main ones like your Dragon Gundam, Maxter Gundam, like the main Shuffle Alliance suits. They've only just started making a lot of those, so it's probably a while till we get some of these other crazy designs, but whenever they drop them, even though, then I don't necessarily have a super personal connection to them, just purely in terms of cool designs, I would probably pick them up. As much as there is a lot that I both love and also really appreciate about G Gundam, there's things as well, major things, that aren't necessarily my thing. And I don't want to say they're outright negatives. These are more so from my personal perspective, especially this one anyway. And it's just the whole idea of this doesn't necessarily hugely appeal to me. Because personally, I'm not a fan of tournament anime. Now, I can appreciate and enjoy, a good short tournament arc in anime series. It's when a series is dedicated and based around a tournament. Shaman King, for example, I could never really get into that series. And the one part that I really did enjoy was not a tournament part. Yu Yu Hakusho as well. Like, I've not got to the part of tournament arcs in it. But when I get to that, I don't think I'll really enjoy that quite as much. Same with Record of Ragnarok. Same with Baki, for example. All these anime that are heavily focused on tournaments and fighting rings and such, I can truly never get into them. And ultimately, G Gundam is a shonen tournament anime, so there's a lot of parts to this series that I just never really cared for, whether it is, the big final Gundam fight, which for some reason goes on for like half the series, or even any of the other fights in between there. They all just felt very repetitive, and I feel that way with, tournament anime for that very reason. The characters losing, they get like a backstory thing, big power-up moment, and then ultimately they win. And it feels like that is rinse and repeat, and it's very much played into this series, which makes sense. It's very inspired by shonen. It makes sense that all of those cliches and all of those genre tropes it would implement. But for me personally, who isn't really the biggest fan of that kind of thing, a lot of that stuff didn't hugely appeal to me. Now, when it comes to the plotline with the Devil Gundam, I enjoyed all of that stuff, especially when you get into the final few episodes or so, when you get kind of the big showdown between Domon and Master Asia. I thoroughly did enjoy that. But there's a lot of stuff in here where I just didn't really care about it. And the only time where I can really get into a tournament anime is when it's got absolutely pitch perfect phenomenal animation. And G Gundam, the animation is fine for the time, but it's not next level kind of stuff. So like I said, I could never truly get into most of what this series had to offer. And also, I think that G Gundam drags itself out as a series. It feels like you get to about 3 points in this series where it could potentially conclude, one of which is essentially after the first half, where it does feel like it's somewhat conclusive. Doesn't conclude everything, of course, but you could have kind of tied some things in where you could have ended it off there, but then it goes on for another half. And then when you get into that half, like I said, very much like repetitive and rehash, if you will, of the first half in a lot of ways. And then you get towards the end and it feels like it gets to a point where, okay, we're concluding it here, but then there's still another 5 episodes left and we kind of do a similar type of thing again. It goes on for a little bit too long. It's not the most appealing thing to me as an idea, but ultimately there is a lot that I enjoyed about G Gundam. I think it is a great series. I think it definitely has its place within the Gundam fandom, and I can see why people say it is the best Gundam series. I can see why it's a favorite for a lot of people. If the whole idea of Shonen Gundam, and specifically Shonen Tournament Gundam, appeals to you, then G Gundam is definitely for you. I think you will enjoy everything this series has to offer, but if you're not a fan of tournament anime, if you're not a fan of Shonen especially, then G Gundam is not going to be your type of thing. There is a lot that I appreciate, probably more so than really do love, and like I said, it's definitely got its place in the fandom. I respect it and appreciate it for everything that it did for Gundam in terms of keeping this franchise alive and paving the way for more stuff in the future. At the end of the day, there's a hell of a lot about this series that really does not appeal to me at its core, and even in execution, still does not quite appeal to me. But like I said, I love a lot about it, I respect a lot about it, but there is a lot that is really not for me either. So with all that in mind, I'm going to give Mobile Fighter G Gundam a B. Before I get out of here though, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you are a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. Also, like I said earlier, head on down to the comment section below, let me know your thoughts on Mobile Fighter G Gundam if you've seen it, and stay tuned because I will have more videos surrounding this series, character tier list, mobile suit tier list, the usual type of stuff, and in 2025 expect plenty more Gundam related videos. Going to be watching things like Gundam Wing for the first time, Zeta Gundam, probably Gundam the Origin, a lot of stuff celebrating anniversaries in 2025. Expect videos videos on those and many other things as well. Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.